that are present, whatever the chemical substances that are present in a living organisms, all together we call it as biomolecules. We call it as biomolecules. Okay. So when you observe this biomolecules, okay, there is a wide diversity in living organisms in our biosphere. Okay, there is a wide diversity in living organisms in our biosphere. That means we'll find different types of living organisms, okay, in the world, okay, throughout the earth. Now, okay, now a question arises in our minds is, are all living organisms made of the same chemicals? Yes. Okay, all they consist of carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, phosphorus. These are the only chemicals that are present in almost all the living organisms. So, okay, that means now the question arises, what are the different chemical substances that are present in the living organisms? Okay, so are all living organisms consist of same chemicals? There is elements and compounds. If you take elements, so sodium, potassium, magnesium, calcium, iron, zinc, like this, different elements are present of carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen. Okay, and different compounds will find carbohydrates, proteins, fats, okay, vitamins, okay, nucleic acids. Okay, like this, different compounds are also present in the living organisms. So we'll find different types of elements and compounds. Okay, and you have learned, okay, you have learned in chemistry how elemental analysis is performed. Okay, that means in chemistry, okay, by this time you might have known about how to do, okay, that is salt analysis. We say salt analysis. Okay, you'll be given one salt, and by doing different tests, you are okay, you can understand what is the cation, what is the anion that is present in that compound. Okay, you'll undergo physical test, will undergo chemical test, and finally patient test, okay, next confirmation test. Like that, we'll do different tests, and finally we are able to understand what is the chemical compound that is given to you. Like that, in the same way, we can also estimate. Okay, we can also estimate. Okay, we can also estimate the different types of chemicals. We can also estimate the different types of chemicals that are present in the living organisms also in the same manner. Okay, that is the chemical analysis. Okay, you have learned in chemistry how elemental analysis performed. If we perform such an analysis on a plant tissue or animal tissue or a microbial paste, that means we'll take a group of microorganisms and we'll crush and we'll get the microbial paste. We'll take a, okay, any plant material like a leaf or flower or any other, okay, and we'll get the tissue. And next, we will take a small amount of animal tissue and we'll crush and we'll get some material. Okay, and that we can analyze so that we can understand what are the different chemicals that are present in that organism, whether it may be the plant or animal or a microorganism. So we obtain a list of elements. Okay, we'll obtain a list of elements. That means there are different types of elements now, like carbon, hydrogen. What are the major, what is the common type of elements that are present in the living organisms? Means the first one is the carbon, hydrogen, oxygen. These are the main and major elements that are present in the living organisms. Are these are the major elements with which an organism is made, we can say. That is a carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. And along with that, there are several other elements are also there, and several and their respective content per unit mass of a living tissue. That means every organism is having a specific composition, even though the elements remain same: carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. But the composition, that means the concentration of that element will be varied from one organism to another organism, and that we can analyze by taking a small amount of tissue of that plant or animal or microorganism, and we can understand the chemical composition of that organism. Okay, if the same analysis is performed on a piece of Earth's crust, okay, Earth's crust as an example of non-living matter, okay, that means, okay, even if you take a non-living substance like earth crust, okay, you can take a small amount of earth, okay, a small amount of soil from the earth, and if you analyze the chemical composition, if you analyze the chemical composition, we'll find the similar chemical substances within the soil also. So from this, what we can understand means, the whatever the elements that are present in the living organisms, they are nothing but they are coming from the environment in which they are living. So that means we'll find the elements, that means whatever the elements that are present in the living organisms, similar elements are present in the non-living objects like a soil or earth crust. Okay, this from this what we can say, that means, okay, the elements, okay, the compounds may be different, okay, whatever the compound that is present in the living organism, okay, non-living object might be different, but the elements are remaining same. We'll find the same elements in the soil as well as in the living organisms. So, okay, when you analyze the chemical composition of a living organism and the non-living object, okay, we'll get a list. We obtain a similar list. Okay, that means whatever the elements that are present in the living organism, similar type of elements are also present in the soil or earth crust also. Okay, what are the difference between the two lists? So that means, almost similar we'll find, but there is a slight difference will be there. Okay, what are those? In absolute terms, no such differences could be made out. Then what he is saying, that means, we'll not find any difference between the elements that are present in the non-living and the non-living objects also. They are absolutely similar, because whatever the elements that are present in the living organism, the same elements are present in the earth crust also. So all the elements present in the sample of earth crust are also present in the sample of living tissue. So whatever the elements that are present in the earth crust, the similar type of elements are present in the living. However, a close examination reveals that the relative abundance of carbon and hydrogen with respect to other elements is higher in any living organism than earth crust. So that means when you observe very closely, okay, that what the close, okay, examination reveals, that means, okay, the carbon and hydrogen are present at a higher quantity, okay, with respect to other elements, is higher in any living organism than us. So that means when you observe, okay, when you compare the content of carbon and hydrogen, okay, the carbon and hydrogen content are more in the living when compared to the earth crust. That is the only difference we can observe. So there is a relative abundance of carbon and hydrogen with respect to other elements is higher in any living organism than in Earth's crust. So when you analyze, okay, we'll get a different chemical substances. So, okay, under this chapter, we'll study how to analyze the chemical composition. So what is the procedure we have to follow? Okay, what is the procedure we have to follow if we want to analyze the chemical composition of the living organisms? That we'll study. And next, we'll go with the primary and secondary metabolites. What are primary metabolites, what are secondary metabolites, and what is their importance in the living organism? And later, we'll go with the biomacromolecules. Biomacromolecules. And later, we'll go with the individual biomacromolecules like proteins, polysaccharides, nucleic acids, And next, we'll go with the structure of proteins. So there are different structured proteins are there. Okay, primary structured proteins, secondary structure, tertiary structure, and quaternary structure. Like this, there are 4 different forms of proteins are there that we'll also study here. And next, okay, when you observe this biomacromolecules are formed by the joining of biomicromolecules. That means the smaller molecules, smaller units are joined to form a long chain of biomacromolecules. So what is the bond present between each each of the biomolecules? Like protein, in proteins, what is the bond present between amino acids? In if we take polysaccharides, what is the bond that is present between the sugar molecules? Okay, in nucleic acids, what is the bond present between the adjacent nucleotide molecule to form a nucleic acid molecule? So that nature of bond linking monomers in a polymer, that we'll study here. And next, there is the dynamic state of body constituents, that is concept of metabolism. Okay, dynamic state of body constituents. Dynamic state, that means why? Okay, that means whatever the elements that are present in the earth crust, the similar elements are present in living organisms also. But why that earth crust is a non-living? Why? Okay, the organisms are in living condition. What makes it a difference? That what we'll study under this concept of dynamic state of body and the concept of metabolism. So we already said, while we are discussing about a living world, we have studied the characteristics of living. What is the primary characteristic of a living organism? Means metabolism. So how this metabolism has developed? Okay, what is the metabolism? That we'll study here. And next, metabolic basis of living. So, okay, how metabolism helps an organism in living condition? What happens when the metabolism comes to equilibrium? Okay, okay, how it is maintained? Okay, that will say. And the next one, living state. When an organism is said to be living, how energy is produced? What is the energy? Okay, that will. And finally, we'll go with enzymes, the biocatalyst. Generally in chemistry, we'll get catalyst now. Okay, involved in enhancing the chemical reaction, but it does not involve in the chemical reaction without being involved in a chemical reaction. That is enzyme. Okay, that in living organisms also will find certain catalyst which will enhances the rate of metabolism or metabolic reactions, and that and that chemical substances we call it as enzymes, which we can call that as a biocatalyst. Okay, that enzymes also will study. Okay, types of enzymes, and next okay, that is classification of enzymes, and next nature of the enzymes, the functioning of the enzyme, and next okay, some inhibitors of enzymes. Okay, that all will study under the concept of enzymes. So first we'll go with the first concept, that is how to analyze the chemical composition. How to analyze the chemical composition. Okay, that is it. We can continue in the same way. What type of organic compounds are found in living organisms? Okay, how does one go about finding the answer? So that means, so how to analyze the chemical composition? How we can, first we'll go with organic compounds. Organic compounds means the compounds which consist of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. Carbon compounds. Okay, the carbon compounds we call it as organic compounds. What? Okay, first we'll go with how to analyze the different types of organic compounds that are found in living organisms. How does one go about finding the answer? To get an answer, one has to perform a chemical analysis. So if they want to know the chemical composition of organic compounds that are present in the living organism, they have to undergo chemical analysis. Okay, they have to undergo chemical analysis. And we can take any living tissue. Okay, we can take any living tissue. For example, if you want to know the, okay, if you want to study the, okay, chemical analysis of a plant material or animal material or a microorganism, whatever it is, first of all, we have to collect a small amount of living tissue. For example, if you want to take plant tissue, you can collect some leaves from that plant. Or if you want to analyze the animal tissue, we can have the liver. Okay, we can collect the liver from that organism or any other tissue. Now, even if the liver is present, we'll collect liver. If liver is not there, we can collect with other tissue also. Any tissue that is present in the living organism, we can collect. We can collect the muscle. We can collect the nerves. Okay, like this, or skin. Okay, any living tissue we can select. Living. Okay, any living tissue only. We should not take, because okay, when it is dead, some chemical substances are lost. So every time when you want to analyze the chemical nature of that organism, okay, we have to go with the living tissue. So the living tissue, it may be any living tissue we can take. And next, and grind it in a trichloroacetic acid using a mortar and pestle. So for example, okay, we want to analyze a animal tissue. For example, per se a bird like a hen. We want to understand the, okay, because the hen is available. Okay, if you can go to the chicken stall, we can collect the liver. Okay, liver. Okay, 100 to 150 grams. So we can collect that liver from that bird. Okay, it will be chopped into very fine pieces. Okay, chopped into very fine pieces, and that is placed in the mortar. Okay, that is placed in the mortar. And next, to that we'll add a small amount of trichloroacetic acid. We'll add a small amount of trichloroacetic acid, and it is grinded with the help of pestle. Pestle means a small rod-like structure. Mortar means a bowl-like structure, which is used for grinding. Okay, which is made up of porcelain cup-like structure, and a small rod-like structure will be there, that is called pestle. Okay, and the bowl is called mortar, and in the mortar we'll place that liver tissue, which is chopped finely. Add a small amount of okay, some 50 ml of trichloroacetic acid, and we'll grind it very thoroughly to a thick paste. So we obtain a thick slurry because we have added a trichloroacetic acid. So fluidy, it will be in a fluidy nature. We obtain a thick slurry, and if we were to strain this through a cheesecloth or cotton, we would obtain two fractions. Now what we have to do means, we have to take a beaker or a flask, conical flask. We can take a conical flask, and next, okay, and we have to place a funnel. We have to place a funnel. Okay, we have to place a funnel on the mouth of a flask. And now what we have to do means, okay, when you observe the funnel is having a wide opening and a narrow opening. Okay, narrow opening is inserted into the conical flask, and the wide opening will be present towards the upper region. And now what we have to do means, the wide opening of the funnel is closed with either cheesecloth or cotton. Okay, either cheesecloth or cotton. And now what we have to do means, whatever the slurry that is obtained after grinding the tissue with the trichloroacetic acid, that is placed in the funnel containing this cheesecloth or cotton, which is closing the nozzle of the funnel. And now what happens? Okay, some fluid get filtered, and that filtered fluid is collected in the conical flask, and some component which is not filtered will be in the conical flask above the cheesecloth. Okay, and whatever the substance that is collected or whatever the fluid that is collected in the conical flask, we call it as a filtrate. Okay, whatever the component that is obtained in the conical flask, we call it as a filtrate, or we can also call it as a acid soluble fraction. Why? Because what is the chemical that we used for grinding? Trichloroacetic acid. So the fluid will be acidic in nature, because whatever the substances which can dissolve in this trichloroacetic acid, they get dissolved in that trichloroacetic acid. The small chemical substances which can dissolve in that acid solution, okay, they will get dissolved and they get filtered through the cheesecloth, and they are collected in the conical flask, and that we are calling it as a filtrate or acid soluble fraction, because whatever the chemical substance that are soluble in that filtrate or in that in that chemical, all they get all they get dissolved in that chemical substance, and they are collected in the filtrate. They are collected in the filtrate. And next, when you observe here, okay, and next when you come to, okay, and some substance will be not filtered and it is collected above the cheesecloth in the funnel, and this component which is not filtered, that we are calling it as a retenant. And that we are calling it as a retenate, okay, or retentate. Okay, that is also called as a acid insoluble fraction. That means whatever the chemical substances that are not dissolved in the trichloroacetic acid, they do not get filtered and they do not collected as filtrate. So whatever the chemical substances that are not dissolved, okay, they get retained in the cheesecloth, are retained above the cheesecloth, and that fraction we are calling it as a acid insoluble fraction, or we can also call it as a retentate. Okay, that is what we can see here. That is what. Okay, so we obtain a thick slurry. If we were to strain this through a cheesecloth or cotton, we would obtain two fractions. Okay, we obtain two fractions. One is called the filtrate, or more technically the acid soluble pool. Acid soluble pool. Okay, filtrate, acid soluble pool. Okay, now so one is filtrate and the second one is acid soluble pool, and the second, the retentate, or the acid insoluble fraction. Okay, that means whatever the fluid that is filtered through the cheesecloth and collected in the conical flask, that is called filtrate or acid soluble fraction. And the and the substances are, and whatever the chemicals that are not filtered through the cheesecloth, and they are present above the cheesecloth, get not as they are not filtered, and that we are calling it as retentate or acid insoluble fraction. Okay, there is. And next, when you observe here, scientists have found thousands of organic compounds in the acid soluble pool. So when they analyzed whatever the filtrate that is obtained, when they analyzed chemically, okay, the filtrate or acid soluble pool, what they observed means some thousands of organic compounds are present in the acid soluble pool. Okay, thousands, thousand different types of chemical compounds are present in the acid pool. Okay. Okay, that is. And next, so in higher classes, you will learn about how to analyze a living tissue sample and identify a particular organic compound. So, okay, when you go to higher education, okay, you can, okay, you will have some experiments related to this. Okay, you will be given some sample of living tissue, either plant or animal tissue, and you are asked to analyze the chemical composition of that living tissue. So that we can understand what are the different compounds that are present in that living organism. Okay, that is. And next, already we said, okay, there are some, okay, in this table, okay, we can see one table. Okay, this table, what this table is representing means whatever the chemicals, or elements, whatever the elements that are present in the living organisms, the same elements are present in the earth crust also. But is okay, but there is a variation in the concentration. Okay, elements are same, but the concentration is different from a, okay, living organism to the earth crust. For example, if we take hydrogen, okay, in the earth crust, the concentration of hydrogen is 0.14, whereas in human body it is around 0.5. It is around 0.5. And next, when you observe the carbon, okay, the percentage of carbon in the atmosphere, okay, in the environment is 0.03, but in the human body it is around 18.5. And next, when you observe the oxygen, okay, in the environment it is around 46.6, or in the earth crust in the form of oxides, molecular oxygen or oxides, peroxides, whatever it is, in different forms, it is around 46.6, but in the human body it is around 65%. And next, when you observe the nitrogen, in the earth crust, very little amount of nitrogen is present, very negligible amount in the soil, because most of the nitrogen is present in the atmosphere. Negligible amount of nitrogen is present, because whatever the microorganism that will fix the nitrogen, that nitrogen is only present in the earth crust. But when it comes to human body, it is around 3.3. Okay, the percentage of nitrogen is 3.3. And like that, sulfur is 0.03 in earth crust, but in human body it is 0.3. Sodium, it is a 2.8, but in the human it is a 0.2. Okay, calcium 3.6, but the human body is having 1.5. Okay, magnesium in the earth crust it is the 2.1, and in the human body it is 0.1. Silicon in the earth crust it is 27.7, but in the human body it is negligible, very small, least quantity, negligible, very minute quantity only present. It is negligible. Okay, so that means we can observe. Okay, that means the elements remains say, okay, similar, but their concentration varies from earth crust to the human body or living organisms. That is what we can understand from this table. Okay, and next it will okay, that is what. So okay, if you want to analyze these elements that are present in the living organisms, okay, the concept of how to analyze the chemical composition of the living organism, okay, this one will study in the higher classes. Okay, that is. And next, it will suffice to say here that one extracts the compound, then subjects the extract to various separation techniques till one has separated a compound from all other compounds. So why it is not included at your level means, okay, now what we have got acid soluble pool and acid insoluble fraction. Okay, simply extracting the acid soluble fraction is not enough. What we have to do, we have to separate the chemicals from that also, different chemicals. Okay, different carbohydrates, proteins, fats, and at the same time, okay, sugars, different types of sugars, and next nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, whatever the elements that are present, all first they need to be separated. There need to be, each element has to be separated, purified. Okay, and later we have to analyze the chemical, what are the different types of chemicals. So that's why it is very difficult. That's why, okay, the concept of understanding the chemical composition, that is the process of chemical composition, is dealt in higher education. So it, okay, it will suffice. That means, okay, in this, okay, that means it is very right to discuss about this one now. Okay, it will suffice to say here that one extracts the compounds. Okay, extraction of compounds is easy, but what then subjects the extract to various separation techniques till one has separated a compound from all other compounds. Okay, so extraction of compound is is easy, that mixed ones, but after extraction it needs to be separated, and later we have to analyze that. Okay, in other words, one isolates and purifies a compound, so we have to separate that element, and we have to get that one in purified form. Then only we can understand the percentage of that chemical. Okay, in other words, one isolates and purifies a compound. And next, analytical techniques. Analytical techniques, when applied to the compound, give us an idea of the molecular formula and the probable structure of the compound. So after separating the molecule, isolating the molecule, identifying the molecule, later, okay, we have to understand the chemical formula, molecular formula, and also the molecular weight and the structure, and the structure of that compound also will have different structures in in chemistry, the for different chemical compounds. So, and all the carbon compound that we get from living tissues can be called biomolecules. So that means, okay, whatever the carbon compounds, like carbohydrates, proteins, fats, nucleic acids, vitamins. Okay, all these chemical compounds will comes under this biomolecules. All the carbon compounds altogether, we are calling it as a biomolecules. However, living organisms have also got inorganic elements and compounds in them. So, along with the biomolecules, we will also find certain inorganic compounds and elements also. So how to analyze this one? So whatever the procedure we have said, that means, okay, taking the tissue, grinding with the trichloroacetic acid, and later grinding to a thick slurry or paste, and later filtering it and collecting the acid soluble fraction and acid insoluble fraction. This is all meant to understand or to analyze the organic compounds that are present in the living organism. Then how to analyze the inorganic compounds and elements that are present in the living organisms. For that, what we have to do? Okay, there is a slightly a different procedure we have to follow. Okay, what is that means? Like how we'll collect the tissue. It may the plant material or animal material. Okay, or microorganism. That tissue. Okay, that tissue is collected. Plant tissue, animal tissue is collected, and now what it is made to dry. Okay, we have to remove all the moisture from the tissue. Okay, so we'll get a wet weight, dry weight. Okay, that means we have to weigh after collecting the tissue. First we have to weigh, that one will give wet weight, and next it has to be completely dehydrated. That means the water has to be removed completely, and later it is the weight of that tissue is noted, and that is use the dry weight. And later what we have to do means whatever the tissue that we want to analyze, that the tissue is burnt to ash. When we burn to ash, what happens? Whatever the organic compounds that are present in that tissue, okay, they are burnt in the presence of oxygen and converted into carbon dioxide and water vapor. And only the what, okay, and finally we'll get ash. What this ash consists of means this ash consists of mostly the mineral nutrients, the different minerals, different inorganic chemical substances, okay, is present. So that's what we can see. So how do we, okay, so however living organisms have also got inorganic elements and compounds in them. How do we know this? A slightly different from, but destructive experiment. Destructive means burn. We have to destroy by using burn, by using heat. So a slightly different but a destructive experiment has to be done. Destructive experiment has to be done. And one weighs a small amount of living tissue and dry it. So we have to collect a living tissue and we have to remove the moisture and we have to make it dry. And the remaining material gives a dry weight. Now, if it is fully burned, all the carbon compounds are oxidized to gaseous form, that is carbon dioxide and water vapor, and are removed. So all the organic compounds will be removed because they are burnt in the presence of oxygen and gives rise to carbon dioxide and water vapor. And finally, okay, and what is remaining is the ash. This ash contains inorganic elements. Okay, this ash contains inorganic elements like calcium, magnesium. Okay, the ash contains inorganic elements like calcium, magnesium, whatever it is, calcium, magnesium, iron, phosphorus, okay, zinc, cobalt, whatever the chemical substances, inorganic chemical substances that are present, all they are present in the ash. Okay, inorganic compound like compound like sulfate, okay, sulfate, phosphate, etc. are also seen in the acid soluble fraction. So some inorganic compounds and some inorganic elements are present in the ash that is obtained by burning the material. Therefore, elemental analysis, okay, therefore elemental analysis gives elemental composition of living tissues in the form of hydrogen, oxygen, chlorine, carbon, etc. So therefore elemental analysis, that means okay, when you go with the elemental analysis, what will get the elemental composition of living tissues in the form of hydrogen, oxygen, chlorine, carbon, etc. Okay, we already said no, 18.5% carbon, okay, 18.5% carbon, 0.5% hydrogen, okay, 3.3% of nitrogen, and 0.3 sulfur, 0.2 in sodium, 1.5 calcium, and 0.1 magnesium. How we are able to understand this chemical composition means by using this one only, by chemical and by analyzing the ash that is obtained after burning the living tissue, dry living tissue. So therefore, the elemental analysis gives the elemental composition of living tissues in the form of hydrogen, oxygen, chlorine, carbon, etc. While analysis for compounds gives an idea the kind of organic and inorganic constituents. An idea of the kind of organic and inorganic constituents present in living tissues. Present in living tissues. From a chemistry point of view, one can identify functional groups like aldehydes, ketones, aromatic compounds, etc. Okay, from a chemistry point of view, one can identify functional groups like aldehydes, okay, functional groups like aldehydes, ketones, aromatic compounds, etc. But from a biological point of view, we shall classify them into amino acids, nucleotide bases, fatty acids, etc. Okay, that means according to the chemistry, they are the chemical compounds, the organic chemical compounds are differentiated based upon their functional groups like aldehydes, ketones, aromatic compounds, like that. But when it comes to biology, okay, they were okay, these smaller biomolecules or biomacromolecules are differentiated as amino acids, nucleotide bases, okay, and fatty acids, etc. Okay, that is. And next one coming, okay, what are the, okay, we can see here, what are the different elements that are inorganic elements that are present in the living organisms? Sodium, Na plus, potassium, K plus, calcium, Ca plus, okay, magnesium, Mg2 plus, okay, water, H2O, compounds like NaCl, sodium chloride, calcium, okay, CaCO3, calcium carbonate, PO, okay, PO4 3 minus, that is a phosphate, SO4 2 minus, that is a sulfate. Phosphates and sulfates. Okay, like this we'll find different types of elements, okay, inorganic elements that are present, okay, but when it comes to organic compounds, okay, the organic compounds that are present in the living organisms we classify as amino acids, nucleotide bases, and fatty acids, etc. Fatty acids, etc. And first we'll go with amino acids. Amino acids. Amino acids are organic compounds containing an amino group and an acidic group as substituents on the same carbon. That is the alpha carbon. Okay, when you observe here, okay, alpha carbon. What is an alpha carbon? Okay, a carbon. Okay, when you observe, what is the valency of carbon? Can anyone knows? What is the valency of carbon?
4, sir.
4. Yes. That means how many bonds it can form? How many bonds it can form? Maximum. Okay, maximum bonds a carbon can form is 4 because its valency is also 4. So when you observe here, okay, when you observe here, okay, when you observe here, when you observe the carbon, okay, carbon can form 4 bonds. Carbon can form 4 bonds. So carbon can form 4 bonds. When you observe these 4 bonds, these 4 bonds means, okay, one bond is formed with hydrogen. Sorry, sorry. Okay, one bond is formed with the hydrogen, and one bond is formed with the carboxylic group, that is COOH, carboxylic group, and one bond is okay, one bond is formed with the amino group, NH2, and okay, that is one is forming with the hydrogen, one is forming with the carboxylic group, and one bond is formed with the amino group, and the one is a variable, that is R group we say. Okay, it will, okay, this group will be different for different amino acids. For example, if you say glycine, for a glycine it is a hydrogen. For a, okay, lysine it is a CH2. So that R group will be varied from one amino acid to another amino acid. The R group will vary from one amino acid to another amino acid, but the remaining three remains the same. But the remaining three remains same. Understand? So okay, a carbon can maximum it can form 4 bonds. Out of all the 4 bonds are different. Okay, that is one bond is formed with the hydrogen, one bond is formed with the carboxyl group, and one bond is formed with amino group. These 3 bonds are same in all the amino acids, but but the fourth one is differed from one amino acid to another amino acid, that is R group. That is represented as a R group. Depending upon the R group, the nature of the amino acid is differed. Okay, that is when you observe the carboxylic group represents the acidic, whereas the amino group represents the base. Okay, carboxylic group represents the acidic nature, COO minus. In acidic, okay, in ionic form, it will form COO minus, so it will give acidic nature. Whereas amino group, NH2 plus or NH plus, okay, it will form basic nature. So that means one acidic group is there, one basic group is there. So together it will form a neutral molecule. Okay, so the overall nature, that is whether it is acidic amino acid or basic amino acid or some other amino acid, okay, the nature of the amino acid depends upon the R group, the variable group, from one amino acid to another amino acid. And now when you observe here among this, okay, that means here the carboxylic group is having carbon, and some of the R groups also consist of carbon, but they were not considered as the alpha carbons. The centrally located carbon, which is having 4 different bonds with 4 different compounds. Okay, this centrally located carbon, we are calling it as alpha carbon, or we can say the carbon. Okay, that alpha carbon. Okay, that's why all the amino acids are called as alpha amino acids except one, which is having a hydrogen. Instead of R group, it consists of H. So in that case, we'll find 2 hydrogens binding with 1 carbon. So in this case, this carbon is not called as alpha carbon. So except this amino acid, the remaining all other amino acids are alpha amino acids. Okay, in the nature there are about 20 in the nature. Mostly occurred amino acids in the nature are of 20. Are 20 in number. Okay, 20 in number. Of that, 19 are alpha amino acids, and only one is the other type. Okay, that is. Okay, that is what you can see here. So amino acids are organic compounds containing an amino group and an acidic group as substituents on the same carbon, that is the alpha carbon. Hence, they are called alpha amino acids. They are substituted methanes, CH4. Instead of hydrogen, we'll find carboxyl group, amino group, and R group. So that's why amino acids are nothing but a substituted methane, CH4. Okay, we can see here there are 4 substituent groups occupying the 4 valency positions. There are 4 substituents. One is hydrogen, one is carboxyl group, one is amino group, and the fourth one is R group. We can see here. These are okay. That means they are substituted with the 4. Okay, 4 substituted groups occupy the 4 valency positions. These are a hydrogen, carboxylic group, amino group, and a variable group designated as R group. Okay, and the variable group, we are calling it as a R group. And next, based on the nature of R group, there are many amino acids. Okay, acidic amino acids, basic amino acids, neutral amino acids, and next aromatic amino acids. So we'll find 4 different types of amino acids: acidic amino acids, okay, and next basic amino acids, and next neutral amino acids, and the 4th one, that is the aromatic amino acids. However, those which occur in proteins are only of 20 types. But in most of the living organisms, how many types of amino acids are present in the proteins? Because proteins are made up of amino acids. The building blocks of proteins are amino acids. So how many different types of amino acids are present? Means 20. The R group in these proteinaceous amino acids could be a hydrogen. Okay, the R group in these proteinaceous amino acids could be a hydrogen. So that R group may vary from one amino acid to another amino acid. It might be a hydrogen. So the amino acid is called glycine. So in the place of R group, if hydrogen is present, then that amino acid we call it as a glycine. And a methyl group is present in alanine. And a hydroxymethyl is present in serine, etc. Okay, 3 of the 20 are shown. Okay, that is okay. And okay, I'll give you the list of all these 20 amino acids in the next class. You can note it down. Okay. So for example, okay, we have given only 3 examples. The remaining other and there are groups, I'll give you in the next class, in the coming up class. Okay, that is. Anybody is having any doubt up to now?